All right, testing the YouTube feed. 1, 2, 3. Keith, if you can let us know if you can hear us now. There it is. Yep. Now we're testing the YouTube feed. 1, 2, 3. Keith, if you can let us know if you can hear us now. 5 times. Just gonna say it back to me. 5 times. Gonna say it back to me. All right. All right, guys. I apologize. I missed a setting. Had some problems, but we're up now. Um, coming back through again and again. I can do that. What is? That's what it is. Okay, I found that one. Phantom mute buttons all over the place. Don't know which ones I need to have selected and which ones not. All right, I think we are good. If we start hearing an echo again, we'll keep looking. But if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and get started with our workshop for May 21st, 2020. And let's just go ahead and get into it. Where the first thing on our agenda is going to be for SPLOST 2021. What we need to do is assign. Do we? I didn't realize this is an official. Okay. All right. We got a quorum, so we need to adopt an agenda. Unfortunately, I was hoping Joey would be able to join us remotely, but he's not able to. So, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Craig makes the motion. Any second? Deb seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. All right. So, let me pull my agenda up so I can see it. Okay, SPLOST 2021. We kind of discussed this briefly last month. Part of the problem we have is that right now, the way the county wants to distribute the money, we would only get $95,000. The way that Cornelia wants to redistribute the money, we would get close to 217,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm actually shooting for one that would get us closer to 270,000, which is what we got last time. So what we need to do is kind of decide how, if we want to come up with 2 models of how we want to use the SPLOST money, or if we just want to come up with one, just straight percentages for whatever projects or things we want to put it into. And my thought was we could come up with one. If we're only going to get 95,000, what are we going to want to put that into? If we're going to get 217, how do we want to split that up? And we might have 2 different types of systems. And of course, you guys now have in your hand, and the public hasn't gotten this yet. I don't think that didn't go out yet. That if we get a new radio system, we're looking at having to spend. Their projections are $139,000 just on new radios for our fire and police department. And that would, if we only get $95,000 for this SPLOST, that would eat that entire SPLOST. So there's some question on that we're exploring some other options. But if you talk to Motorola and you talk to the county, yes, you can.
Last time you had
yeah, and that we were told that there are other sources that are telling us that might not be necessarily true. But I have to get a demonstration that another radio would work on that system. But for now, I think we need to be safe to right now budget and plan that may be what we have to end up spending. So for the 95, if we only got 95,000, I would guess we would want to plug all of that into public safety to cover that cost of that rate, those radios. If we ended up with the 200, let's say 17,000 or more, how do y'all want to divvy that up? Because half of that would go into the radios, the rest of it could go into our other projects. And one thing to keep in mind is that the county is approaching this, almost 90%, I believe, of their SPLOST revenues are going to go into public safety this time. And very little of it's going to go into streets, if I remember correctly. I tried to get a hold of that list, but I didn't get it in time. So they had shifted their direction on what they're going to do. So they're really going to plug this as a public safety SPLOST. So us using it for public safety fits within their framework and within their parameters. But I'm sure there's room to maneuver and put it into other things like water and buildings if we end up with that 217,000. So that's kind of what we need to talk about, how we want to split that up, how y'all think the best use is, so that I know how to present it to the county when we have our discussions. Correct. Correct. Mm-hmm. We would need the tier one. They even put on there such as fire. Um, I'm not sure of the exact breakdown of these, but I know that mid tier and tier one are going to be mostly for fire. Oh, see that? For the police, we need 2 mobiles for the police, 1 for each vehicle. I spelled it out in mine here. I don't know about handhelds for police. We would need at least, I would think we would need at least 3 for the police, but she may need more, and I did not have that discussion with Tanya. For the fire department, we would need 4 mobiles, 1 for each truck, and then we would need a minimum. We need 2 handhelds on each truck, so that would be 6 for our big trucks. We could get by without putting any handhelds on the F-150. We don't, just the mobile on it would be adequate. Then we would need at least 4 for our officers for the fire department. So that would get us to 10 that we need for the fire department. The reason being that the way dispatch works, when they call us out on when they page us out on a call, their system is to go about 2 minutes. If they don't hear from anybody in the fire department, they'll page us again. If they don't hear from us in another 2 minutes, they'll call another station in. So it can take us 6 minutes to get down here to the station on most of our calls before we can ever radio into to dispatch if we don't have a handheld. So right now we've assigned our officers, our highest ranking officers, the chief, assistant chief, and the captain, and our first lieutenant all have radios that they take home with them. And that way, at least one of the 4 of us can get on the radio and say, we know that we got the call and we can move on. So that would kind of be our minimum. Hang on, I've got someone wanting to sign into the meeting.
Roughly about 16 radios, and then looking more around 72,000, 8,000 bucks. Based on their.
Yeah, based on their numbers, I came up with a number of 120,000 between.
How many radios?
That would be 6 mobiles total and at least 15 handhelds between the 2 departments.
21.
Yeah. So, and then multiply that by their, I calculated based on the tier 1 mobile and portable numbers. Okay, y'all probably need to talk into your microphone. Or is Craig's on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you really need to be able to hear yourself come across the speaker up there, and then you know that they can hear you.
Other thing, and I'm assuming that they looked into this, considering buying a new system, but we need to make certain that it is compatible both counties. As you know, at one time,
Yeah,
it was
it's
compatible with Habersham, but not Raven, and that became an issue.
yep. No, that problem will persist.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's gonna happen again.
It is.
See, that's not good. I feel like we're just
Yeah.
getting a half deal. Communicate with both counties, because our city is divided.
Well, no, we can communicate with Raven. Most of these radios have the analog capability, and then eventually Raven County is going to go digital also. So we can communicate with them, but we'll still have to have two. We have to have radios that will work on both systems, and this will. So it's a kind of a headache for us. We have to change. I can't get into all the details, but it's a convoluted system to have to for us to switch over and start talking to Raven, and when we're on the Raven side, we can't hear Habersham and vice versa. So we actually have one of our trucks has two radios in it. One's an old analog, so that we can listen to Raven all the time, and that doesn't cost us anything. We pulled it off of an old vehicle. So
Basically, on that option, the $94,000 plus or minus will go to public safety. Simple enough.
okay, yeah, that's sounds like based on these numbers, I was honestly expecting more like 40,000 by the first numbers we saw, but when they sent this out today, this knocked me out. I was like, oh, that kills our entire SPLOST.
Does anyone check those radio costs? Are they real? Awfully high.
It was to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're still in the process that they haven't made the final decision, but and I still want to voice my concern. I just got to figure out who to voice it to. I may maybe calling Mr. Hall here very soon. So
$4,500 plus or minus for a radio.
For a
seems
radio.
excessive.
yeah, our old ones were $900. The ones that we're
Yeah.
still using were $900.
And one other thing, just when it does come that time, I realize it's not quite, we're not at that point now, but I would like to make sure that it's compatible also with the state park and their system,
Yeah, we'll look into that.
as well as Forest Service. You know, it's right up the road there.
Yeah,
Those are the two biggest entities in town, and we need all the professional public service, public safety needs to be able to communicate adequately with each other, you know, especially if we're gonna spend $94,000, you know. We don't wanna, y'all remember, we went through a big negotiation with Habersham County when they were using the tower up on the hill and paid into a system that turned out
well,
a
and
raw deal, but that's another story.
that's
for
another story,
day,
and that might.
another day.
And Warren and I are discussing options on that, and we may need to renegotiate that contract. So we may have an ace up our sleeve. We just need to figure out when the right time to play it, if we're going to play it, is. So yeah, that hasn't escaped us.
Okay, you know, I
So,
just
yeah.
don't want to spend this kind
No,
of money
I-
and go back down that same road. We've been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So Warren's looking into some other options for us that we may be able to take advantage of. So with that being said, if we can't get an increase, then I'm getting the feeling that we're just going to need to take that 95 and just apply it 100% to public safety. So let's talk about if we get 217, we're dreaming, and we get it. How do we want to break that up?
Well, you know, public safety is gonna need 130,000 right off the bat.
Right. So I put down roughly 50% to public safety off of that. And then we'd have, so then we need to prioritize roads, government buildings, and water. I think water is still a priority to us.
Water would be the next priority, and then I'm not sure about public buildings, how we're doing on the.
Ac-
Can't be used to
I don't
it.
know if how much I can give out on this. There seems to be an option that's floating around with the DDA, and I do not want to speak for them at all, that might not require us to do much with the building. So,
Leave it out of the situation at the moment.
okay. Because we did have public buildings in the Raven SPLOST, correct? And we did have water. So we've got that money coming in from Raven County.
I think there's 50 in that one.
Okay. So that would leave roads and water to try to do another roughly 100,000 with. You want to split it equally between the two, or weigh heavily on
Enough.
just split?
I mean, detailed breakdown on what exactly.
Yeah, and we don't.
Where we have the most need, I would say. I know, the delivery system for picking up now, fire junk. I don't know where we stand, on the roads. We need to spend some, how much, I don't know how to tell you, break that down.
We do have some in-roads already too that
Do
we
we?
haven't spent. So, and
You
we've
know how
got
much-
water in the new Raven, not enough to cover what we're talking about doing, but for roads, I think we're good on roads.
I mean, a little heavier towards water and sewer. Water.
water. Okay, what would y'all feel would be a good? We do 50 for public safety. You want to do 50 for water? And not worry about roads. And one thing I want to point out about roads is, Craig probably knows this better than anyone, is that old bridge over there across the river. It's going to be really expensive the day that we decide it needs to be resurfaced. So,
That's another discussion we need to have about giving that back to the future.
okay.
Yeah, that has been an issue as well, as y'all know, over the years, it's gonna be responsible for it, so that's right now, it's a little gray area, when it's to their benefit, they claim it's to our benefit, if it is one, we try to claim it.
There's no benefit.
There's no benefit to us at all.
It needs to be DOT responsible.
Yeah, it's a millstone around our neck.
And I think that, the last work that was done over there, I believe that the DOT or the county one paid for it.
Okay.
The approach, the guardrails, the approach on the guardrails, and a bit of resurfacing as far as cracks in it. This is your wheelhouse. Expansion joints, a little bit of work on those, and on the guardrails, the approach. I believe it was paid for by the DOT at that time.
Okay. So we may need to have more discussion with them, see what we can
Right,
twist their arm about.
right.
All right. So that being said, just want to split it 50-50 then?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. All right. Do I need to have a motion and second on that, or just consensus is good enough? Okay.
Consensus is good, and we'll put it on the consent agenda for the meeting, but we'll go ahead and get them our list,
Okay.
just ratify
Well,
it. And then,
that's part of our discussion, whether we give them the list or not.
well, yeah,
Because
right.
Cornelia's not doing it. Cornelia's not turning in their list. They're not, they question the legitimacy of the number of the population numbers on who's would enter into the IGA. So, and we're questioning it with them. I just want to have something in hand in case we get to negotiations and they say, okay, yeah, we're doing this.
There's been a
instead.
couple of them that have asked for more time too,
Right.
so.
Yeah. All right.
So we're still in negotiation. Is that what?
We're
that's
still
where we left
pushing.
it, is where I understood it?
We're still pushing for negotiation. We're pushing, right. We haven't gotten an official, yeah, let's get back together, but we're still having conversations with people trying to get that to happen.
If you look at page 4, that shows the option 1, option 2 that were discussed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they settled with option one.
Right, and they
Well,
voted for
Cornelius
option
upset 'cause
one.
They lost $1,643,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the past, we've been successful, if you remember, in negotiating it up quite a bit, because of School Falls being in such a unique situation.
Yeah.
Influx of tourism, the state park being here.
Well, and we were,
It helped us, it was to our advantage, you know.
yeah. And we were successful because option one is what all the cities and the counties presented to the county commissioners. The county commissioners are the one that changed their mind. The rest of us, everybody else was in agreement with that, or maybe it was option two. The one where, yeah, option one. No, that's not right. That's not right.
Now, option two,
Option two, which is what Cornelia came up with. And we, in our last meeting among all the municipalities with the county, with some of the county present, all agreed on this, on the other option. But the county at their last two meetings, or two of their meetings, decided, no, we're going to do this. So they're basically saying, we don't care what the cities say, we're going with this, which puts them into the 5-year SPLOST, which might end up resulting in them getting even less money than if they agreed to go with our option. And that's what we're hoping to point out to them.
all of the other cities other than Cornelia, Clarksville, and us were getting the same amount either way. So they were kind of happy either way.
In the past, David, you remember, in fact, Carl went down, negotiated quite a bit of difference, to the tune of up $100,000. The other cities at that time, they didn't seem to mind kicking in a little bit bigger portion to come
Yeah.
to Tallulah Falls because of the state park and
Right.
being in population wise, we get the raw end of the deal
We do.
on something like this.
Well, what I pointed out to him was that we have, if you look at it, and Cornelia's looking at it this way too. If you take our average visitor and break it down to a daily visitor amount, we have over 2,000 people in this town any given day. And that's residents, students, and visitors. We also are a huge magnet to the film industry, which injects a lot of money into this county. And the tourism trade brings a lot of money right into Cornelia, Clarksville, and brings the people up here, but we don't get any of the money. So they're basically telling those of us that are most heavily impacted by tourism, the film industry, and outside influences that they don't care that we don't get at all. They want to split among themselves because of where people lay their head at night. So,
Yeah, and basically, it looks like the county's upset that they didn't get the jail money that they wanted from the public.
yeah,
They put everything, all their, apples into the SPLOST. They put it all towards public safety, and they gained $2 million extra
Yeah.
based on this formula.
that's right.
That's what they're doing.
It is.
Because the public we didn't vote for, Riverwood and Habersham didn't vote for.
Right.
Jail.
And they're taking it out
They're gonna
on
use
us
that money
three
to get the
cities.
jail.
Well, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
It's not in their list. The jail's not in their list, but they could, if they end up going to the 5-year SPLOST without us, they could put it all in the jail. But then they got to tell everybody that's what they're doing, and so now you have another jail referendum basically that would probably fail again. So, and that's kind of the long shot of this, is that if we continue, if Cornelia, Clarksville, and Tallulah Falls continue to bring up these points and make this publicly known, there's a very good chance that the SPLOST doesn't pass in November anyway, no matter what they choose. So bringing us on board, trying to figure out a way to keep us on board, is to their benefit. We just have to be able to get through and get them to see that.
Right.
And that's what Cornelia's working really hard. John Barrow's working really hard to try to get them back to the negotiating tables, talk about this one more time. So, and I'm trying to do everything I can not to step on his toes in the process.
Yeah, he's trying to help us,
Oh yeah.
get a bigger cut out of the deal.
Yeah. He came back. His thing was, if you can get us to 6 million, them up to, I think, 6 million, anything beyond that, which was one of our first options, he said, we will happily contribute that out and pay it out to bring everybody up back whole, he said. And that's what everybody agreed to. That is what we came up with. And they were willing to do that, take out of their share from another model and bring everybody back up to the same level with the overage, because they said, no, all we really need is this. So they were trying to be reasonable. And I really appreciated that from that standpoint. So,
I just think it's important too that we at least voice our feeling about it, instead of just, laying down and taking what they feel like getting out. Because even if we don't get anything out of it this time around, it gives more leverage next time around or whatnot.
right.
It'd be a mistake, I think, just to let it go without at least addressing it.
Yeah. And like I say, we may have what I would refer to as a nuclear option that I may present and see if I can't get them to say, okay, yeah, we'll do this other, we'll look at this again. So, but I just want to make sure, I don't want to pull the trigger on that too soon, because we may not, hopefully we don't need it. So, all right. So that's what I'll work off of, are those numbers. And so let's go ahead and move on to our document security, I'm calling it. I don't know if you saw the paper, Clayton paper this morning, but there were, two police departments broken into, and another facility broken into, and some sensitive documents may have been taken. We don't know, and the GBI is investigating, so I want to be careful not to put too much information more than what the newspaper already put out. So,
What police department?
Dillard and
Clayton.
So
They broke into a police department?
two of them. So this happened. We got word of it from a reliable source before it was out in public knowledge, and a concern about some of our sensitive documents that are on paper only. They're secure. They meet all the security requirements by the state. They're what we call double locked, where they're behind more than two. They're behind at least a locked door, and then they're in a locked cabinet. And some of them are behind two locked doors, and they're locked in a cabinet. So it takes effort to get into them. It's just that if they were able to get into a police department and get their documents, we decided to evaluate what we had and thought we need to come up with a different option. And so I contacted Linda and said, let's find another way to this. Right now, Larry, we talked about this briefly. Linda did take those and put them into the police evidence lockup where they're safe right now. The problem is we've got more documents than can fit in there. So we need to figure out another option. So I'm going to let Linda kind of walk us down what she's come up with.
So we looked at a couple of different options. If we want to stay old school paper, then, we may have to look at doing another safe and putting it either in the clerk's office or the mayor's office. That option, depending on the level of fire protection and security, is probably going to be somewhere in the $2,000 range. The more attractive option is probably going to a cloud-based backup. Then you're covered for, fire, burglary, everything, and gives us more. We still have our original documents here, but we have that extra backup in case anything were to ever happen. It would also protect us against any kind of tampering. Not that anyone here, past, present, or future, would do anything to tamper with any kind of documents, but it does give you a level of protection against that. Sorry, I'm suffocating. The document management systems have different protections built into them to where they track any kind of changes that are made to them, who made them, when they were made. It files it depending on the system. It may be like if we want to put minutes and that kind of documentation on there, it may be something that we can then put in as a part of our website, to where people can do searches of our minutes and go back and research different topics, and it'll be easy for them to locate something when we're talking about, an item that may have happened 10 years ago and you don't remember everything, but, you remember something about it. So those range really from, $50 a month probably to, $5,000 a year. So there's a wide range of that. So I think if you are open to that option, I think we can look at doing it on a small scale to begin with and kind of build, pick a system that we can build on as we need it. We're not going to be able to get everything on there all at one time. If we do have a volunteer coming, that may be a good
A really good use of their time
thing
while they're here.
that they could be scanning, some of that information and getting it started. So that's kind of where we're at now. There's a lot of options. I've put out some feelers to the Georgia City County Managers Association, the GLGPA, which is the Human Resources Association, and the Clerks Association, and just trying to get a feel for what everybody else may be using to make sure that we look at, all the newest and most popular things that governments are using. There's a lot of programs out there that aren't necessarily tailored towards the governments, but there's some that are. So if they're not too expensive, that may be our better option because they build in retention policies. And so if you're supposed to keep something for 20 years, then it'll flag it for that and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. And everything we're looking at will have high level encryption and will have ways to restrict access so that, for example, if we have certain files, let's say police reports that we want to put in, I think we've got software that's managing that for us for the police documentation. But if we had something else and only Tanya needed access to that, then we can say only Tanya has access to that, not anybody else.
Excuse me, Mike, can you check the waiting room?
The way, oh yeah.
Mhm.
Who's up there? Terry. There she is. All right. All right. So, yeah, we will have the high levels of encryption. We will restrict, like if you had, if we were to put on incident files that we've put in for the fire department that might have sensitive information about a patient, then only the fire chief would have access to that. And then if there are documents needs that we can restrict it to just her. And then we can, other documents like public minutes, we can make read only to more people if we wanted to go that way. A lot of these are based on the numbers, the cost is based on how many users you need. I think the most we would need would be 3. We would need the fire chief, the police chief, and the clerk. And I think after that point, if any of us needed a document from the system, we could contact one of them to get that. So that would keep the costs down. And one of them that she looked at, I think e-file looks very promising. And it was, I think, about $55 a month per user. So
Per month, per user, per month.
per month. So
Linda, could we not go to the company that we use now for our system that we hired on to a few months back and just get some guidance from them and tell them that we want to be able to secure our
I have reached out to them, and Johnny Walton is supposed to get back to me by Monday with his recommendations. So
I would say just check with them and see, because they seem to be doing this for a lot of cities and stuff, and just see what their advice is to handle what we've got going
right,
on.
he didn't have any recommendations right off the cuff, but he said he would look into it and get back with me first of the week. So.
yeah,
Basically, we would just be adding another element to the service that they already provide for us, basically, if I'm understanding it right. We're asking them, we want to, I would call this an add-on. We want to add on, be able to protect our files and things. police department, council members, and whoever. So, they're already supposed to be securing our system for us.
Yeah, and they are, and this is a little bit different than like a backup. I mean, this is more of a document management tool to where you're able to, you
Yeah.
know, find things and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we could do it on our server. We could do it ourselves on our server. We can restrict user access to it. The problem is that if the hard drive on the server fails, there is a risk that we lose data. It's also harder for us to, it's more, let me rephrase, it's a little more dangerous for us to be allowing any outside eyes into the server. Whereas if we're using a cloud-based system, they're designed, they've already got everything implemented and in place to allow that level of access. And we've got automatic backups and we can change the access to it. But yeah, I'm interested to see what our tech company comes back with as a suggestion, and they may have something already in place that we could implement as well. But we were really looking more toward the cloud service because of the flexibility and freedom it gives us with that system.
When I talked to Warren earlier, I asked just out of curiosity if they use one, and he gave me the name of it. He said they weren't entirely happy with it, so he didn't necessarily recommend it. He said it was kind of one of the older versions that was a little bit antiquated now, but he said that theirs was housed on their server, but they would definitely be looking in the future to a cloud-based service.
So what happens with maintaining your own server is that when something fails, you have to fix it. If you're using a cloud-based system, they fix it, and it's part of their service. So we don't ever have to worry at all about whether there's an equipment failure. They automatically take care of it. It's part of your fee, and that's one of the greatest things about using a cloud-based system is that they have multiple redundancies in place. If there's a hardware failure, you never even know it happened. So you're never down. Whereas with ours, we'd have to wait for our company to come in, swap out the drive, repopulate the drive. It could take days for that to happen, depending on how much data we've got. So it just going with software as a service on a cloud-based system is really the direction almost everybody else is going to be going anyway. So, so the question is whether whether it'd be okay for us to continue pursuing that if y'all want to put kind of a price limit on us, or if y'all would feel better just getting a fireproof cabinet and we just store things in here. One of the things that I've been running across, I've been reading through our old minutes from 1944 on and realized that's the only paper copy we've got of those documents right now. And if something were to happen to them, a flood, fire, mice, we'd lose that information if we don't have some other backup of those. And I'm sure there are other paper documents in here too that kind of fall in that same category. And then our main biggest concern was getting a particular type of sensitive information off the paper into something digital so that someone can't walk in, pick it up, and walk out with it. They would have to hack in through multiple layers of security to get to it.
And there's a lot of the HR files that are permanent records, so they're there for
I've got
eternity.
a
So
drawer that deep in the fire department, permanent records.
I'm okay with the idea of at least pursuing the idea of the cloud-based. But would we, like, by the next meeting, have some actual numbers to look at?
I think so. I think we can.
I would say just continue to gather some more information, if you will, Linda, and starting point to me would be to start with the company that we currently use and just see what they recommend. Make a decision from there. I'd have to rely on the professionals because this is not my wheelhouse here. You guys know more about how it operates and what's best, and most feasible than I would by far. So just follow the leads of the professionals on it, see what they tell us.
Right. The
Okay.
main point of this was to find out which direction do you want to go, with a fire safe, the fire cabinet, the do nothing approach,
Yeah.
or the cloud based. So,
If we do cloud-based, do we still need a new cabinet too, or
no,
I don't
I don't
believe
think
so.
what do you think, Greg?
Better get a good scanner.
I think our,
Very busy person.
Yeah, our copier does a good job. It scans.
and then if we get things set up in time, Donna will be here and we could set her up with a laptop and just let her go to town.
Does she need any special thing to make sure that she's an authorized person to do that? I just
Well,
want to
we're-
make sure everything.
Yeah, we're doing the background check and that meets
Yeah, so we'll
most,
have all that.
yeah, that meets most of those requirements, I would think. But yeah, that was the first question I asked Linda was, is there anything that would stop us from being able to go completely digital if we wanted to? And she said, as long as it meets certain criteria, the court systems, I think, are the ones that are most stringent. And as long as it's got OCR and we can reproduce the document in a readable fashion, then the state does allow for us to go digital.
Yeah, that's where the good scanner comes into place because you've got to be able to reproduce it to where it's readable.
We utilize cloud-based for all our plans and Langer and a bunch of other items in our company currently. But I see the invoices come in, and the fees do increase, and they do have your data. You just need to study it. Fees do increase once they got you on board.
Do you know what company they use there?
Ours are construction based, so it's probably
Yeah,
not
if it's,
similar.
y'all using
Need more.
Procore,
What's that?
y'all using Procore?
We do use Procore.
Yeah.
We have several companies we work for that use different systems.
Okay.
We have to
Yeah.
become members of all of them.
Oh,
There's health and there's safety and there's plans and everything else. So we're probably members of about 10 or 12. And our
wow.
monthly fee is a lot higher than you would imagine once you actually read it out. So you don't want to get trapped in a situation where this guy uses this, now you got to be a part of that. That's a company issue. That's not a town issue. So you
Yeah.
just gotta study it.
Yeah, we'd only be on one platform. One of the platforms is connected with MuniCode, which we're already using for our ordinances. We just have to figure, I think we're still waiting on information from them,
MuniDoc, yeah.
MuniDoc. So that one would integrate directly with our website. So if we had minutes, they'd be there. But if we had other things that were more sensitive, those wouldn't go to the website at all. So, so we'll keep going on that. I kind of threw it in because it happened last minute and because Joey didn't want to discuss Blue Line until he was here in person to be able to speak with Tanya about it. I just figured we could at least address this and keep Linda moving and knowing which direction to go.
And we weren't sure right off if we were going to be able to put everything in there, so we were scrambling a little bit. But
Yeah.
she made room for all of those HR files anyway.
So, all right. So we'll keep working on that and bring that back to y'all in our next council meeting. If there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and open it up. If we have any public comment, there's only one person from the public. Terry, did you have anything you wanted to contribute? She's raising her hand. Yeah, go ahead, Terry. No, it doesn't say she is. Now she's muted. Let's unmute her. I can't. Okay, Terry, you're free to speak if we can hear you. Oh, she's saying no comment. Okay. Tell her she's raising her hand on our screen over here. So that's why I thought she went there. She took care of it. Okay. All right then. If there's no more business, then let's have a motion to adjourn. Deb makes that motion. Craig seconds. All in favor. Thank you guys for showing up, and to all our YouTubers out there, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for putting up with our technical glitches in the meantime. We're still working through the problems, and we'll talk. See y'all later. Yes, and everybody else. Yes. Let me get that YouTube stream ended. Into that and then close my meeting.